that's not built on off the back of any kind of research or any kind of customer insight, then you kind of trying to cram that customer experience into your product rather than the other way around. So
my name's Peter Sumpton, and this is the Marketing Study Lab podcast. A podcast for those that are thinking, have thought and are doing, or already have a marketing qualification. But there's a little bit of something for everyone, as we cover a whole host of marketing topics. I chat to some amazing guests, each one a superstar in their own niche. And if you have a burning marketing question already, or after this episode, get in touch, we'll chat it through. peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk, or find me on LinkedIn, the link is in the show notes. If you'd like to leave a review on iTunes, this will really help others find this podcast and spread the marketing word. Now let's get on with today's episode. Over the coming weeks, not only do we have some amazing guests to chat with, but we'll be taking a look at the marketing mix, more fondly known as the 7 Ps. You might know it as the extended marketing mix. However you know it, the 7 Ps stand for product, price, place, promotion, process, people, physical evidence. You'd have to write it down and remember it. We'll cover each one and then we'll do a recap on the 8th episode. But let's crack on first and have a little chat with Branka Injac Misic. Branka Injac Misic is the CMO of GigSuper, a company that helps self-employed manage their money in Australia. Sound boring? Well, it's Branka's job to turn taxes into something we should all be excited about by looking after the community of customers that use GigSuper. Not only this, but she runs her own company as well, OneTinyTribe.com, that offers prints, posters, and artwork to inspire and promote adventures amongst mums and baby boys. So there's not much going on in Branka's life, and I really appreciate her giving the time to speak to me. But with all this going on, I really needed to ask Branka this one question. What is the worst online experience you've ever had?
That's a good one. Probably the one that has kind of stuck with me and that I've actually been thinking about maybe turning into like some kind of a case study or something, is so one of the mobile phone carriers here in Australia is called Optus, and I'm with Optus. And one day I was working from home and I had my little girl with me. She wasn't feeling well. And my friend sent me a message and she was saying, I've been trying to call you, I can't get through. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's a bit weird because I've got, my little reception lines are all good. So I tried to call her back, couldn't get through. Tried to call my husband, couldn't get through. I was like, okay, sent him a message. He tried to call me, couldn't call me. So I could send messages, but I couldn't call. And I was like, okay, this isn't good because I've got a child at home who's not well. Like I need to be able to rely on the phone. So I jumped onto Optus's chat on their mobile app, and the support, like the customer service chat, just kept putting me on hold. I couldn't reach anyone. And I was like, oh, well, I can't call them because my phone's not working to call. So I'm thinking, okay, what is the one place that most of these big businesses, like where they are always around, like 24/7? And I'm like, you know what? Sales. They love to make sales. So I switch over from like the customer service line, like the support line, and I go into the like sales chat. And like they come up straight away and they're like, oh, how can we help you? And so I lay out my scenario and I'm like, look, I've got a sick kid at home. My phone's not working. Your customer service is crap. I need somebody, I need this phone fixed. And sure enough, they were like, oh, sorry about that. We'll like patch you through to customer service. Like we'll push you through the line. And, it all got fixed within I don't know, maybe 20 minutes after that. But it was just such a annoying an insightful moment that, like, you know, to think that's where you play. So that's where you're always available. You're always available in a place where you're going to make sales, but not where you already have the customers. And this is kind of like a reoccurring theme, right? Like everything about, how do we acquire but forget about retention kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that would probably be, I mean, look, it may not be the worst one, but that is one that's definitely stuck in my head.
Sure, and then your circumstances kind of compound that as well. So
yes. Yeah, absolutely. And, on any other day, it may not have been as big a deal, but in that case, it really was.
Yeah, but we're all individuals, and companies have to realize that, our perception's reality, and everyone's got a different perception. So we have to, and we have to develop as companies along with those perceptions and make sure they get the right perceptions, which leads us nicely into me asking you, what's your actual story and what's brought you to this stage of your career as CMO at GigSuper?
Yes. So I got a bit of a windy one, but okay. So I finished like the equivalent of a business degree overseas. I actually lived in Serbia for a while. So after uni over there, I mean, look, it's like that in a lot of places, but over there in particular, your first job out of uni is always through a connection. Like you'd be very surprised to find somebody who like landed, a grad who just landed a job without any help. So I ended up in an ad agency, and I wasn't really sure what I majored in marketing. I knew I wanted to do marketing, but I wasn't really sure, it's just such a broad field. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. So I was like, okay, ad agency, interesting start. And they kind of took me on, and they were like, look, go around and kind of shadow all the different functions and let's see how that goes. But they didn't have enough desk space. So they put me in an office with the copywriter. And 2 weeks later, he got fired. And he was the only copywriter in the agency. So they were like, oh, well, you picked up knowledge from him. Here's some work just to get us through while we hire another copywriter. And I was like, oh, okay.
Okay.
So I really got thrown into the deep end. But I really loved it, and I was okay at it, and we didn't end up hiring another copywriter. And I was at that agency for about another year and a half after that. And then I moved to another ad agency. So I kind of started my career in copywriting, which, at the time, like when they first put me in an office with him, I was like, oh, like there's a person who does the words. I don't know why. I just assumed, I didn't really think it through. I didn't know. But I just kind of thought, designers do the design. You kind of know what a designer does, but copywriters are this weird other thing that people seem to end up learning about, but it's just not as commonly known.
Like a mythical creature, but I suppose on that, it's a case of anyone can write or 99% of the population or whatever it is, made that stuff up. But most people in the world have some level of writing. So when you say copywriter, it's almost doing it a disservice because people can write. So what's the big deal?
Yes. Yes. So, and I mean, look, it was eye-opening to me. And then I did actually at one stage, like in the ad agency I moved to after that, I did get one of the girls, I can't remember what her function was, but I remember her going, so you write all day. Like, I could probably do that, right? I was like, sure. Why don't you give it a go? So, and then I kind of had to take her through, thinking about how that copy's meant to influence and sell and all of that. And she was like, oh yeah, nah, I'm good. Like, I thought you just kind of wrote stuff. And I was like, yeah, it's not really just kind of writing stuff. So, but it was good. Like, it was a really great start for me. So, so then what happened after that, I moved back to Australia, and I ended up getting a job in real estate, actually, of all places. But that was really good because that ended up really solidifying all of my direct response skills. So working closely with sales and kind of having to learn that side of things was eye-opening, but it was really great. And then after that, I was on maternity leave actually, and I got headhunted by a fintech company all the way up north. So we kind of picked up and moved the family up there, and I was there for almost 4 years, and that is actually where I fully became immersed in Cialdini and persuasion principles, and ended up moving to UX and UX writing. And that was the place where I came in as the copywriter there, and the company was just rebranding at the time. So it was like, okay, we need a style guide written. We need this to be part of the brand. We need all the customer service documentation and like scripts rewritten. And I ended up, after about a year, I ended up owning the whole communication across the business. So from customer service scripts to autoresponders to the website. The only thing I didn't do was the ads. We ended up hiring an agency, but everything else sat under me.
Cool.
So that was really the place where I kind of learnt how that experience looks as a whole. So even though I was taking care of the communication, but I had to understand all the different parts, and I had to understand how all those different parts of the business impact the customer. And that was where I was like, wow, this is what I want to do. Mm-hmm. I mean, up until then, I just, thought I wanted to be a writer. And then I was like, no, I want to do strategy. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what I've been looking after at every job ever since.
Cool.
So I did, that's really the gist of it.
So you currently work at GigSuper, amongst other things that you do. Can you explain yes. what they provide? Because you can probably put it far more succinctly than I ever will.
Yeah, no, sure. So we are a superannuation fund built purposely for self-employed people. So in Australia, superannuation is basically the government's way of making people save for their pension when they get old. And here, what happens is the government makes employers shave a percentage of a wage and put it away into a superannuation fund for their employees. So that's like a must. And the average is 9.5%, but some government jobs have more than that. Mm-hmm. But what happens when you're self-employed is that it's not compulsory. So a bunch of self-employed people, especially people who have kind of been employees and then they go out on their own, what ends up happening is super, like this thing that has been handled for them, kind of hits as a reality and is like, oh, I don't really know what this is. Like, I know it's money for when I get old, but I don't really know like the processes and how to handle it and the processes, because the system was built for 90% of the working population, which is, the employer-employee. Like the 10%, the system just doesn't work as smoothly. So there are all these workarounds. And so basically what we've done is we've gone and created an app which lets self-employed people automate the whole thing. So we've filled it up with, a bunch of tutorials and hand-holding and really simplified it all the way down and made it simple for self-employed people to sort of get on top of it, because we're all going to get old. We're all going to hit that point where we're going to go, oh, I really wish I'd started super when I was younger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's that far into the future that it's almost, it will never happen to me, but it will.
Yes. Yes. And you do notice, we've done a lot of research, and you notice that as people start getting older, there's a point at which they start becoming more engaged and more thinking about it. So, the early 20s,
Yeah.
You know, it, like you said, I will never get old. Like, I'm just not going to get old. And I get that. I was there once. I understand that. So yeah.
Within your role then, because
Yep.
the current or what you've just explained there is massively important, but as you've sort of alluded to, it's a case of, well, I don't need to know this until it's, whoa, yes, I do. And providing a customer experience around that, or designing a comm strategy around that, I'm guessing it's quite difficult. So how do you get people engaged in that?
Yes. that is a great question, and my biggest hurdle. No, look, we've made sure to do as much research as we kind of could with our resources and time and all that sort of thing. So we've, pulled together focus groups and things, and I've, sat down with every self-employed person that I know and been like, now, right, listen, and taken them through. So we have built something off the back of all of that research. But going out there and going forward, there's kind of two facets. One of them is trying to engage people in a way where they're going to go, where their guard is going to come down, because a lot of people, they just seem to have a guard up about this sort of thing, and trying to go, look, and it's true, the financial industry is just littered with jargon, and it's a difficult thing, and a lot of us kind of go, oh, I'm not a finance person, I don't get it. Mm-hmm. So just kind of being able to communicate that it really has been simplified and it's actually not as complicated as it sounds, really kind of helps with that sort of that step of things. But then, on the back end, we've really streamlined everything and built a product that works really well. And look, it's not completely frictionless. I wish I could say that, but there are going to be versions 2 point whatever. But to begin with, it's a way better process than doing it manually.
Cool.
And so, kind of combining those two things, it's also been about, for us in particular, it's been about being human, because this industry is just it's very I don't want to say pompous, but right now I cannot think of another word, but I'm gonna. And so it's just been about it's really been about bringing the human side of it into the communication, into the product, into the branding, to really make that connection with the customers.
Okay, so just while we're on customers and experience and all that kind of thing, within marketing there's almost two phrases, that's CX and UX.
Yes.
Is there a difference between the two, and what the hell are they?
Yes, and they both sound a bit buzzwordy at the moment, but it's just because at the moment everybody's kind of going, oh yes, there is these things that are important, and it's so good, and I'm so happy that they're becoming more of a thing. But yeah, there's a difference between user experience and customer experience. So, I mean, in a nutshell, user experience kind of sits within the umbrella of customer experience. So it usually sits within the product team. I mean, I've been part of places where it sat in the marketing team, but marketing kind of ran product. So, but one kind of can't take priority over the other. They're codependent. So the user experience side of things will usually sit within a digital product, whereas customer experience is the overall thing. So that'll encompass, everything from customer service to brand to advertising, pricing, all that sort of thing. Whereas the product really focuses more on like usability and the visual design and the information architecture and that sort of thing. But, if you think about it as an overall, like you could have a really great user experience. Like you could have an app that works really, really well, and then something happens and your customer service sucks,
Mm-hmm.
or you don't have a brand that resonates. Well, it kind of can't work without the customer experience. But then on the other hand, you could have amazing brand and a really generic product, and it's like, oh great, like I liked you as a brand, but I'm not going to use this. So they really are codependent, but they are two different things.
Okay, that's great. That makes perfect sense now. Thank you very much for clearing that up, doing my head in. In terms of, again, experiences, do you think the offline experience that we have with organizations should be mirrored online, or are these two very different experiences?
Look, I think they're not. I mean, they're not always the easiest thing to pull off from business side, but they definitely do need to be mirrored. And again, that sort of will end up sitting under the brand. So, if you've, I mean, I guess, like I said before, if you've got, let's say you've got I'm going to go back to an app, but you've got an app, and throughout the app it kind of communicates with you, and it's personal and it's comfortable, and it makes sense and it makes you feel good. And then you need to communicate outside of the app, offline with the business. Let's say they've got a branch and you need to go into a branch, and the communication there is really formal and short, and you kind of go, oh, is this even the same company? So you do need to make that experience fluid across the board, but that again is a tricky thing to do, and it requires having a team or having a person sort of sitting above, making sure that all those things fit well together.
I quite like the analogy. I'm just sat here thinking, I quite like the analogy of online dating. So in terms of the online and offline experience, and how it should be mirrored.
It was a really great app to use, but then I went out.
Yeah, I experienced it in real life, and whoa, that was not expected.
Yes, and that company's like, look, we take no responsibility. That person is not part of our team.
Yeah, you know that little tick box before you started using the app. Yeah, that's our disclaimer. Should have read that in more detail.
Yes, exactly.
Brilliant. So we hear a lot about personalization, speaking about online dating, and we hear a lot about personalization, omni-channel approaches, now a now culture and platforms that are becoming more and more intuitive to what we want and our likes and all that kind of stuff. Does that make the customer experience or generating CX easier or harder?
Do you know what? I think that depends on the company, and it depends on your prioritization of the actual customer experience. So I think in some ways, algorithms and AI and that, the predictive side of things, it makes jobs easier within the company. But I think that if you have not, as a business, if you have not prioritized customer experience, and you've kind of gone, you know what, I have an idea and I'm just going to build something because I have this great idea, and that's not built on off the back of any kind of research or any kind of customer insight, then you kind of trying to cram that customer experience into your product rather than the other way around. So, so if you've got these predictive things that are working within the business, well, sure, they're working based on that, but then you kind of start getting actual customers and actual feedback, and you might find that those don't align because you kind of didn't put the customer first. So that kind of probably doesn't really answer the question straight up, but what I'm trying to say is I think it can make jobs easier, but I also think that I mean, I've come into contact with too many businesses that haven't placed the customer experience first, and then, all of that stuff doesn't help. It really doesn't make the job easier.
But I think one thing you've fundamentally highlighted there is the fact that everything should be based on research, and kind of the clues in the title that it's a customer experience. So you need to know and understand what that customer wants as an experience.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And look, I think with this whole, you need to think about collecting enough information. Like, I know, a few years ago, like 5 years ago, we went through like big data and all of those kind of, again, buzzwords and stuff. But I think you need to think, if you are building something that is truly customer centric, think about the information that you want to collect and present. So personalization isn't just saying, hey, John, in an email, but that email is like super generic, and you can tell that there need to be other things that you might want to collect and you might want to personalize that experience based on. So, but again, that tends to quite often be a secondary thing. So then people go, oh, wow, I don't have all the information that I need. So it's, it doesn't become as personalized, and the experience isn't as great because it's kind of built backwards, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. From your point of view, where do you feel that most companies are failing within their digital experiences?
Look, probably that, to really continue with that conversation, I think I would say, at least in my experience, it has been building things backwards. So not putting the customer first, and not building something that works for that customer. And and I also have to say, and it's not because I'm biased, but I do notice it a lot more. The communication is often something that lets businesses down. So, quite often I've seen product teams that have amazing designers and product managers and, a dev team that's like world class. And then you kind of go, okay, cool. So who's doing the comms? And they've built the product, and everything, like, it works smoothly in terms of the development side of things. But then somebody gets brought in at the very end and like, here, write some words. And, I mean, I can think of one place where that's happened to me before, and I was like, you know what? I've come in. I can't fix this with words. You need to involve the communication person or the content person at the beginning of the process, because there are parts that these people have the skills to be able to contribute to this conversation and make this product even better, rather than just sort of trying to mask things with words where they don't work. So, yeah, I'd have to say that would be one of the things that I've at least noticed, where quite a few companies fail with digital experiences.
And it's usually because we're all in our own silos in those organizations, and the mentality is, well, this is my silo, this is my department. I couldn't possibly do that. That is your department. And it hurts my brain when I start to think about that, because I'm just not wired like that. It's one and the same thing. You're there to solve somebody's problem. So why can't we just, everyone's got their own expertise, but if you put all those expertise together, you're usually stronger than you are sitting in your own silo.
Yes, absolutely. And I do think that startups seem, quite small startups seem to get it right more often, but it's because the teams are smaller. So they kind of, there is no silos.
Yeah.
It's like the whole team is all sitting in one co-working space, like, but yeah, look, bigger organizations are also heavier to move, and that kind of transformation takes a lot more time. So, but I mean, that's where we're heading, and that's what businesses are going to be differentiating themselves on, the experience. So everyone's going to have to get along.
But if you think about it, it works. It's so cyclical and it all comes back to the same thing. But you involve customers and you do your research into what experiences they want, and they start to know, like, and trust you a lot more, and it makes those conversations easier, and they want to buy from you, and everybody's happy. And it's the same thing internally. You involve people in things from the start. They feel closer to it, they want to be involved in it, and they want to succeed, and they want that to succeed. And it's like, it's just an easier conversation. So why wouldn't you want that? Rather than this, no, it's mine. Get off it. It's mine.
Yeah. I mean, you are preaching to the choir.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
I totally agree.
Okay, so I'm hoping you'll agree on these then, because I've grilled you on quite a few extensive questions there. So you're ready for some quick fire questions?
Yes.
Brilliant. Name one must-read business book.
Contagious by Jonah Berger. That book is, it's a bit heavy, but it's heavy with examples, and it is absolutely amazing and all about why things catch on. It's brilliant.
Okay. What was the last thing you Googled?
Okay, so I'm going to reveal that I love books here, but I Googled "This Is Marketing" by Seth Godin. I need to get that book.
Yeah, I'm not a big reader, so I try and listen to books. Yeah, and I've just finished that. I'm halfway through it a second time. Brilliant.
Oh, okay, great. So I'm Googling the right thing.
Yes,
Excellent.
Absolutely, definitely, 100%. Totally agree. What is your most used app at the moment?
At the moment, it is Instagram. Because I am trying to grow 3 businesses on it. So I am on there all the time.
Yeah, like we were saying at the start, you're not a busy person anyway, so
no.
Okay,
not at all.
What would be your one tip for people who are studying at the moment?
To try and get some kind of internship, or as many internships as possible. That would probably be it, because it's really hard. It's really hard to know what you're going to do. I mean, look, unless you are like, I am going to be an orthodontist. I mean, then it's quite I imagine it's quite a linear path, but in particular in terms of marketing, it's so broad, and you just want to get as many experiences as you can so that you can, kind of start figuring out what you're going to be doing. Yeah,
absolutely. Final question. Did you save your pocket money, or did you spend it straight away when you were younger?
I'm a saver.
Yeah, I knew it.
I saved all of my pocket money. I used to, at 14, I got my basketball refereeing degree thing. So my friends were working at Macca's and I was reffing basketball. I did that for 8 years. It was the best job I ever had. And we used to get paid in cash. And I used to come home and stash my little things in this little jar that used to live behind the TV. So, and then one day I was like, oh my gosh, I'm rich. But yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm the saver.
Great. Okay. Branka, if people want to find more out about GigSuper, I suppose mainly if we've got any Australian listeners, that might be helpful. Or get in touch with you, or understand all your different companies and why you've got plenty of time to speak to me for as long as we need today, where should they go?
The best place is www.gigsuper.com.au. But also, if anybody wants to get directly in touch with me, it's just branka@gigsuper.com.au with a K, Branka with a K.
Cool. Branka, it's been amazing to talk to you today. I could speak to you about CX and customer experiences and all that all day. It's fantastic. You're clearly passionate, and I've really enjoyed this. It's been great.
Yes, me too. Thank you so much.
Branka, once again, thanks so much for joining us on Marketing Study Lab this week. Here are my takeaways as usual. Streamlining a customer experience is hugely important, and it can make a massive difference, especially in complex industries such as finance. Branka breaks down the perceptions and walls that are built around the complex and keeps it as simple as possible when building CXs. CX and UX are actually different. A user experience, UX, usually sits within a customer experience. This is the usability of a product or service, if you like, whereas the CX covers everything, as we found out on the previous episode when we spoke to Teresa Gandhi. From what the customer hears and does, to the branding, the journey, and the main touch points through this journey, CX is all of the above. And finally, base everything on customer research. The clue's in the title, CX, customer experience. It's theirs, the customer's experience. And you need to understand what they need and what they're looking for to provide them with the right experience. And finally, here's the first of our P's, our 7 P's, the marketing mix. Number 1 is product. Now, the product element of a marketing mix is easy to understand. It's the product you're selling to solve a customer's problem. Without this, or some carnation of it, such as a service, you're basically trying to sell air. Unless air is actually what you're selling. And then this becomes the product. You get me? Told you it was easy. Within the product section of the marketing mix, you need to consider what the product is, what it does, why it does this, and why people need it. In terms of its position within the overall marketing mix, the product will help to establish the pricing structure, how it will be sold, through what channels, and the features and benefits it will invariably be sold upon. Thank you so much for joining us today on Marketing Study Lab. It really means the world that you're listening to this out there. And hopefully I've provided you some value. If you're looking to know more about what Marketing Study Lab does and is about, go to marketingstudylab.co.uk or get in touch with me personally, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or feel free to email me at peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk. Happy marketing.